Welcome to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast, your go-to resource for all things tennis coaching. Stay tuned for insightful discussions and practical tips that will make a real difference on and off the court.
Are you just tired of all the lies and the endless stream of top tips on social media from tennis experts? Welcome, as always, to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. I hope you're all well. Another very warm day here in England, in a very warm house. Hope you're all well. And yeah, today I'm going to talk about social media again, and the influence of social media and the appeal of certain social media accounts and the rise of sort of online coaching as a business. And before we get into it, I know there's going to be some irony here because obviously I'm very popular online, but quite a lot of followers. I do run an online coaching website, so I understand the irony of me discussing the issues with social media coaching and the online coaching community. However, there seems to be a real uplift at the moment within coaching content online and lots of big name accounts. And I'm always quite cautious when I do podcasts or videos like this one where I'm critiquing a coach or an account. I tend to only critique big accounts. So that's why I've got quite a few videos of Mr. Monotoglu on my channel. I don't really critique grassroots coaches, because I think grassroots coaches pretty much just copy the trends, really. And there's a coach I follow who's a good friend of mine, and like he is just copying trends. So, and I understand why coaches do it. So I just want to set that out from the start. Like this isn't a critique as on the coach as an individual, but it's more about the messaging. Because again, the coach has some weight in the tennis world, and we'll look at it in a minute of why he's got so much weight. But the danger in the messaging, and that's why, again, I've talked about Monotoglu in the past, like some of the stuff that he puts out, learning theory-wise, completely loose, but he's got a big account. He's got millions of followers. He's got a lot of weight. So I think, therefore, he has a duty of care to the tennis industry for the content he puts out. And again, if big name coaches are going to start producing tennis content online, I think they have a duty of care as well. And a lot of the stuff that gets put out there is loose, to say the least. I've got a great example today of sort of a big name coach who's worked with some big name players, sticking out some content to promote a website. And we're just going to look at it from a learning theory. Again, this is not ripping on the coach. I don't mean any disrespect to the coach whatsoever. Coaches only know what they know. But for me, it's the messaging. So I'm going to play the clip, the reel from Instagram. We're going to look at it, and I'm going to sort of talk through it, and I'm going to sort of look at the interaction that we had as well. Obviously, we're live on YouTube. If you do have any questions, comments, thoughts, please do leave them in the chat. I really like it when we have the sort of the Q&A at the end of the podcast, and over the past couple of weeks, there's been some great sort of questions and stuff as well. So are we tired of tennis social media? So I'm going to play the clip now. So the clip is from a coach called Sly Black, who I believe is a very, very famous coach. He's worked with Sloane Stephens, and he's worked with Coco Gauff at younger age groups. And he's promoting a well-known tennis website. And the well-known tennis website really focuses on coaches who worked with professional players in the early years. And it's all over the place. And I took not offense, but I got a little bit sort of wound up over the clip. I don't normally comment on stuff. Like, it takes a lot for me to comment, but I'm going to play the clip now. I'm going to show the interaction between me and the coach, and just talk through the messaging.
Video with Djokovic when he was 6 years old, with a guy dropping a ball to him. And I remember the coach was just pushing Djokovic's racket back every time. Before he bounces the ball, Djokovic racket got to be back. So what that coach did to Djokovic, he sets Djokovic's path toward becoming a professional tennis player, because...
So I'm going to stop it there straight away. So this is a very famous clip of Djokovic's apparently first ever lesson. And the coach at the top is saying, well, the coach set Djokovic's path off to be the greatest player of all time by, one, drop feeding, and number two, pushing Djokovic's racket back. So that's a big assumption to make straight away, and that's what caught my attention. I was like, oh, that's quite a big claim to make, like, on the first session. So yeah, so there we go. Let's carry on.
from day one, he had Djokovic taking the racket back before the ball bounces and swing up to the ball. One of the most important part of tennis is the ability to prepare for the tennis ball early.
And that bit I agree with. Like, you've got to get your racket back to create a little bit of space between you and the ball. Obviously, racket head speed is dependent on getting the racket to travel over the big distance. So that part we're actually aligned with. Like, I do agree that trying to get the racket back on certain types of balls is quite important. Not always possible though as well, because if I jam you up, so if I smash the ball in line with your body, you won't be able to do that. If I stretch you, if I get you hitting outside of the body on the run, you won't be able to do that. So again, context is key here, but the way it's framed is every single forehand, the racket has to beat the bounce. In reality, I've got clips of Djokovic, which just in hindsight, I should have put on. I've got lots of clips of Djokovic where he doesn't get the racket back before the bounce. So again, context is key here. And this is kind of a problem because people watching this will look at one, you've got a very high profile coach at the top, Sly Black, okay, worked with two top American female players. And then obviously you got Djokovic at the bottom. So the messaging here is like, well, these top players and this top coach is telling you to do this with your players. And what tends to happen, and coaches will look at this clip, like it, comment on it, but then take it onto court tonight with their little 5-year-olds, and they're pushing the racket back at the 5-year-olds. And this is my bugbear with it, to be honest.
So we want from day one, this is a concept any young kid can do from day one, get the racket back first. Okay, so we're going to try that with Paulina, okay? So racket, back, good, up, good ball again. So she would not swing until I would not let her swing until she get the racket back, okay?
Obviously very coach-led here. Got to ask yourself, whenever does the ball come from that angle? If we're talking about preparation, so preparation is perception, like what information is the player using? Nothing from the environment, because she's waiting, and the coach says himself, I will tell her what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. So in terms of preparation, there's no perception skills being developed here, because the coach is very much in control of the player, but also the environment as well.
Ready? Racket, back, wait, time, swing. Good girl. Ready again for me.
So again, ask yourself this question. When in tennis, does anyone tell you what to do and when to do it and how to do it? So if we're looking at representative learning design, probably not the most representative practice in the world.
Racket, back, wait, time, swing. Racket.
And listen, this is not a complete knock on the coach. The coach is doing his best of what he knows. And to be honest, like, you probably go around any under-8 red stage session this evening and you'll see this being done. And my issue with this video is it carries a lot of weight. Again, you've got a very high profile coach. You've got obviously Djokovic doing the same thing at a young age. So you have this idea of, well, it must work because this coach knows what he's doing. He's worked with 2 professional players, one Coco Gauff, like really big name. And obviously Djokovic done it. So, oh yeah, this must really work. But in the points I've already highlighted, like, there's no skill being developed here. There's no perceptual attunements being developed because the player is just following instructions. Those instructions don't exist within the game. Again, you don't have a coach shouting you what to do. And the information that she's using is not relevant because the information she's using is coming from the coach. She's not really attuned to the ball. She's not attuned to her environment. She's also on the wrong size court and using the wrong size ball, but other sort of factors. So there's a lot going on in this video.
Back, wait, time, hit. Good. 2 more. Ready? Racket, back, wait, time, hit. So my first job right away, I will add the feet to that. So right away, as soon as she gets any concept of what the game of tennis is, then we're going to add the feet. So that's I did with Corey from day one. I recognize she's already have the ability to learn very quick. So right away, we went right into the footwork right away.
So yes, she learns very quick because I'm just going to pause there. She learns very quick because it's a really decontextualized situation. Like, it's very difficult not to get good at that very quickly because there's very little variability. It's all controlled. It's all controlled by the coach. And that's why, like, these type of exercises and drills are really appealing because it looks like progress is made really quickly. Well, it is because the human system, that little girl, she's really adaptable. So she's adapted very quick to quite an easy decontextualized situation. Interesting bit with the feet as well, because she's not using her feet because she's standing still. And the whole idea of this lesson as such from this website is about perception, and they may call it reading skills or preparation skills. But you have to understand from a human system point of view, we need to move to actually get a better view of the world. And by moving, it actually helps us perceive the world better. And things like keeping your head still, probably one of the worst pieces of advice that you can give to a player is keep your head still, because we have to move our head to get a better understanding of where we are in the environment. That's how the perceptual system works. So as you can see, again, I think there's really good key messages in here. Yes, when you have the opportunity, get your racket back early. What we have to understand is in a match, that's not always possible. So not every shot can you get your racket back, because unfortunately in tennis, there's an opponent trying to beat you at all times. My job is to take time and space away from you. I've got to jam you up or stretch you. And if you're jammed or stretched, you won't be able to take your racket back. That's why we see players block or sort of jab the ball back. So I think that there's some good messages in there's some good messages in here. How this coach and 99% of coaches around the world develop this skill is decontextualized, and it's not very environmental rich, like we've looked at over the past couple of weeks in the podcast. Representative learning design, quite minimal. From a learning theory point of view, it doesn't quite make sense. And again, this is not ripping on the coach, because he only knows what he knows, and he's got some really strong confirmation bias because he's worked with 2 really top players, but he's worked with thousands of players at this point. So if this method was really, really powerful and strong, why doesn't every one of his players become really good? Why have only 2 made it out of the thousands? And again, if you look at the millions of tennis coaches around the world who drop feed like this and do this drill, and in the UK, we call it like the starfish, where the players go into like a starfish position and then they hit from there. Well, if it worked, then every player would be able to do it, wouldn't they? So I'm going to share my interaction with him now. And again, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek at the start, because like I say, yeah, of course, ignore the entire perceptual system, but Novak did it on lesson 1, so it must work. And that's what I took. That's what annoyed me a little bit, was the fact, okay, there's a lot of name dropping going on and Novak does it, so it must work. And I'm like, well, no, because you've decontextualized the whole practice. And I've already highlighted in this podcast why it doesn't quite make sense from a learning theory point of view. But it must work, because Novak did it in lesson 1. Again, that was the bold statement at the start, wasn't it? Novak did it on lesson 1, and it set him on the path to being the greatest male player of all time. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the coach pushing the racket back that made Novak the player he is. And this was the reply. And fair play to Sly. Like, fair play. Thanks for engaging and replying. And Sly, if this podcast does get to you, listen, jump on the podcast with me. Let's talk tennis. Because again, I'm not saying that my method is right and his method is wrong. I just look at it from a learning theory point of view. I try and bring some of the academic theory to tennis coaching, which at this stage is still non-existent. Like, a lot of tennis coaches have no idea. Again, this is my assumption of his coaching. He's basing his coaching on information processing. Okay, if I just show you and tell you and you do it enough, then it automatically becomes a representation in the brain, and then you just repeat it over and over again. So he has got a theory. That theory doesn't quite link into modern contemporary skill acquisition. So this was his reply at My Tennis Coaching. Yes, this concept sure works. Big assumption. It did for Novak. Huge assumption. I remember the first time I met Serena and Venus at the age of 9 and 10. So again, you can see the name dropping and the confirmation bias and the survivorship bias. And people think because these players like Serena and Venus are gone, obviously Richard was their dad and he wasn't a tennis coach, and he just fed them lots of balls and fed them out of a trolley, if you've seen King Richard, the film and stuff. And people think like that's why the players get so good. They completely ignore the fact that they play lots of like real tennis matches. They also ignore the fact that they may be really highly adaptable humans. So it's there's again the name dropping sort of just like that's not evidence. You can't use that as evidence because there's so many variables in play. Anyway, and then he carries on. All I can remember is the father, Richard, saying, take the racket back early, and guess what? Novak became the best male player ever. Agreed. Serena, the best female player ever. Yeah, arguably agreed. So the concept of preparing early for each ball will be an essential part of a junior who is dreaming of becoming a professional player. I don't think getting the racket back made them the greatest players of all time. And it's really, really dangerous, that message, because like he can put in a lot of names in there that I can't say I've been on court with Serena and Venus or Coco Gauff or Sloane Stephens. I can only look at it from a slightly theoretical point of view and my own sort of experience and research. So the concept of getting the racket back early, again, it's an important concept. Like if you're in a balanced position and you want to strike on the ball, like, yeah, of course you want to get the racket back early. But the chances are in a rally, you may get one opportunity for that. The other opportunities, you won't have a fully sort of take back or preparation swing. And that's a danger, because coaches will look at that, parents will look at that, players will look at that and go, oh my God, that works. It worked because look, Serena, Venus, Novak, Sloane Stephens, Coco Gauff, it worked for all those players. Therefore, I must do that. And I'll get my little Steve or Stephanie to do that tonight. And you're actually making things more difficult. So I'm going to share my reply. It's quite a long one, so I'll try to make it as big as I can on the screen, but I will read it out if you are listening on Spotify. So at Sly Black Tennis, that's ridiculous assumption. And it is a ridiculous assumption. Like, just to say that one, telling the players get the racket back made them into the best players ever. And then I go into a little bit of theory stuff. As a tennis coaching expert, you understand how the perception action coupling works. So perception action coupling is, as humans, we interact with the environment, we take in information, and that then influences our behavior, our actions. And that's what the perception action coupling is. Most tennis coaches don't have no clue what the perception action coupling is, but that's what it is. Look back on my previous videos, and there's lots of stuff on the channel as well if you want to know more. And then I carry on. You know that skill isn't something we program by telling the players to take the racket back. You do understand that these are humans and not computers, and have a perceptual system, not a CPU. Again, the idea that we program players is still dominant in tennis. And that's why you see lots of stuff on repetition, muscle memory, shadow swings. From a learning theory point of view, they don't really have a lot of value. And we've looked at sort of over this over the past 6-8 weeks in great detail. And we've shared papers and stuff as well. Players are humans. Humans are not computers. You do not program a player. I carry on. For the record, skill emerges through interaction with the environment, not from copied instructions. Players learn to time and organize their actions based on what they see, hear, and feel via direct perception. That's not early preparation. That's attunement. Quoting Novak, Serena, or their parents proves nothing. That's survivorship bias. It's lazy and just creates more folk pedagogy of learning. How many juniors were told the same thing and never made it? Skill adapts through experience, not slogans. And there was no reply. Again, I quite like having conversations with coaches on this stuff. And I quite like challenging, their assumptions and their theories. And I also like being challenged as well. And I know this is a bit of irony, because I called out a coach that called me out the other week. But it's fine. I don't mind this kind of stuff. I think this type of conversation is good. It's healthy. And I'm not there to try and say my method is right or his method's right, but I'm there to offer some evidence. I'm there to challenge people's thinking. And I'm also here for people to challenge my thinking as well. So if you do have any questions, comments, thoughts, please leave them on the screen. In the chat, and I'll put them up on the screen at the end, and I'll answer them. But hopefully you can see the dangers here of sort of putting this type of messaging out, because players, parents, coaches, they believe it straight away, because it's really quite easy and it's a top level way of thinking of, well, if it worked for that player, then it must work. And that's where we get the copy and paste methodology of coaching. Again, I had a coach message me this week saying, can I have all your drills? And I'm like, no, because they're pretty pointless. And they're like, why? Because they work for my players, because they've been designed for my players. Like, drills are just drills. You can do the same drill with 2 players and have completely different outcomes. And I said, well, on my website, if you do want to purchase stuff, like the stuff on there in terms of learning theory and how to make you a better coach, how you can design environments and how you can manipulate practices to develop more skill. But there's no real drills that you can copy and paste. and they weren't interested. They just wanted the drills, because again, there's a assumption that drills make players, and that's the point of this video here. Like, the coach makes the assumption of, well, this drill made the players. You can't make that assumption. There's just too many variables in play. And again, the coaching question, it's a pretty common thing, right? Because most tennis coaches around the world are producing content like that, and people are buying it, and people are listening to it and going, oh my God, that's so good. And these accounts are getting big reach and big numbers. And that really hurts tennis coaching. And there's a great video this week. Again, I should have clipped it out actually, of someone doing a parody of a lesson when someone's watched a Monotoglu video and they come to their coach and go, well, I see Monotoglu do this. Can we do that? That's starting to happen now. And like, someone around the world at some point would have took that clip of Djokovic, brought it to their coach and went, well, can we do this tonight? Because look, it worked. And that puts the coach in a really difficult position, because you're going against the own coach's methodology. And the coach hopefully will go, oh, well, like, they're going to be quite ethical and go, well, yeah, I don't really believe in that. But then parents go, yeah, but it'll work for Djokovic, because it's really easy to think those things work. And that's why I started my tennis coaching. Okay, well, let's try and bring some actual academic theory and research to people, rather than just relying on survivorship bias. I think that these things work. And what I've started to do is, obviously my tennis coaching is growing, it's getting quite big, is I'm actually going to do a coaching conference with people like myself. Because one of the things I get thrown at me all the time is, yeah, that's just your opinion, that's just your theory. I'm like, number one, okay, it is my opinion because it's my channel. But number two, it's not my theory. Like, I didn't make all this stuff up. Like, I didn't create ecological dynamics. I didn't create ecological psychology. I'm not the first coach in the world to do constraint-led approach. There's lots of coaches out there. The problem is, there's a lot of coaches out there using this methodology, but they don't make it front and center. They're not all over social media like these other coaches, like these traditional beta coaches. So my idea is to bring, okay, let's bring together 8 of the best coaching minds in the world. And that's what I'm going to do in February next year. So I've created a conference called the Modern Tennis Coaching Event. And I've got 8 speakers. I'm not going to release the speakers yet because we're still finalizing agreements and stuff like that. But 2 of the speakers at this moment are Grand Slam winning coaches who are using a player-centered, slightly ecological approach. We've got some skill acquisition experts. We've got strength and conditioning expert. We've got a couple of coach developers, and we've got a head coach who is actually bringing an ecological approach to business as well, with a non-linear coaching system where there's no sort of linear program and players can play multiple times a week, and it's great. So that's the Modern Tennis Coaching Event. It's going to be February next year. I've left the link in the description down below. It's really cheap. It's online. It's virtual. There's going to be a mixture of presentations, and there's going to be panels as well. So I'm going to get coaches from other sports. I'm going to get some academics. I'm going to get some coach developers, some researchers, and we're just going to talk about player development. And it's very specific towards tennis, but I'm going to get other sports coaches in as well. I've got friends now across lots of different sports who are applying this stuff. So if that does sound quite interesting, please do check out the link down below. And that's it. And I think the whole idea of this channel especially is, okay, can we change the narrative? And the dominant coaching methodology, the traditional way of coaching, is still very strong. It's very difficult to break through, because even myself, when I present stuff, I always get the, yeah, but Yannick Sinner just won Wimbledon and you were having a go at him training the other week with a basket drill. So basket drill works, look. I'm like, well, that's not how skill acquisition works. That's not how human learning works. So just because he's winning Wimbledon and he's doing basket drilling doesn't mean it's because of the basket drilling. But there's a assumption that tennis coaching is the reason why these players are highly successful. Again, if you look at Sinner's upbringing, so many tennis matches, so many opposed practices. Again, this is a great research project that maybe one day someone will do. I guarantee most of the top players have played more opposed practices than they have basket drilling. Basket drilling may be a very small percentage, but we assume that basket drilling works. Why? Because it's the bit where all the information goes. Because again, we believe learning's done by explicit instructions, being told what to do. We believe learning's done by watching others. Learning's done by interactions and relationships. We've made that point quite clear, especially last week's podcast as well, when we looked at the paper on cognizing. I can never pronounce that word. So it's trying to break free of that assumption and that belief. I've got a few minutes. Obviously, this is not a long podcast today, but if people are still live and watching, leave me some comments, leave me some questions in the chat, and we'll more than happy to answer them. Let me just sort of finish off with a couple of stories from the week as well, because this week it's actually summer holidays here in the UK. So my performance program, or the performance program I work on, it stops. All the players go off and compete. So all the squads and stuff stop. So this week I actually had some time to do some lessons with people that I normally wouldn't be able to coach. And I had 3 brand new beginners this week. I had an under 8, a teenager, and a retired adult. And complete beginners, only played once or twice before, classic sort of played at school with all 3. But literally beginners, never really played, don't really play much tennis at all. So complete beginners. And I said to them at the start of the session, this may be a little bit different than you were expecting. We're literally going to play tennis for the next hour. And they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, we're just going to play tennis. And I said to them, okay, well, let's first of all set the court boundaries. So again, the under 8 played on a small court. The teenager started on a orange size court, and then we moved it up to a full court. And then the adult as well, we actually started in the service boxes, moved back to orange court, and then sort of to the full court. So we scaled the court. Players used a ball that was comfortable to them. So the red player had a choice between the sponge ball and the felt. Teenager had orange, green, and yellow. And then the adults had green or yellow. And they picked the ball that they wanted. And we just played tennis. So the intention was set very clear. So we're going to start with the ball. We're going to play the ball in, and then we're playing against each other straight away. And all you've got to try and do is get me off balance. Like, that's the whole concept of tennis. Just get me off balance. If you get me off balance, you may make me miss, or I may miss the ball completely. So don't hit the ball to me. Try and get the ball away from me. And we started playing. And then it was a case of, okay, can we start with a serve or a high five? I literally called it a high five to the under 8. Just high five the ball to start it off. And again, after the serve, let's play. And then it was just coaching cues like, well, can you stretch me? So stretch means trying to get me to hit outside of the line of the body. So can you get me sort of moving and stretching? Great. Now, can you jam me up? Can you get the ball to come straight at me and jam me up? And that's really hard for me because it sort of makes it quite difficult to balance. And then if I jam or stretch you, can you survive? And we did that for an hour. And we played tennis from the start, and we played matches, and we played points. And I'm telling the story for number 1, there's a misconception or a huge assumption that beginners can't play matches. 3 beginners, 3 different ages, 3 different stages, all played a match in the first session. There was no basket drilling. There was no hand feeding. There was no get your racket back early. It was points. There was pressure. Feedback from the players, loved it. Absolutely amazing. So good. Thanks so much for that. That was literally amazing. Can we do it again next week? So all the assumptions that we have as coaches of they need to learn how to hold the racket. They need to learn how to swing the racket. They can't play points because it's too much pressure, and we need to take all that pressure away and teach them how to move. Rubbish. And I'm not saying it, oh my God, look at me, I'm such an amazing coach. And part of me is like, yes, I have the confidence to do that. I also have the knowledge to be able to do that and to be able to scale and stuff. But beginners can just play the game straight away. They don't need drop feeding like this video. They don't need to get their racket back early. They can just perceive and act and perceive. And that's the beauty of this methodology of coaching. It makes my job really easy as well, because I'm just focused on intentions. Like, can you get your opponent off balance? Can you jam them, stretch them? When you're jammed or stretched, can you survive? And can you win points? And I think that's something that we lose a little bit. And I think part of it's in coach education, because coach education tells you all these very complicated frameworks, and we have to teach tactics and technique and stuff like that. But the game is relatively simple. Put the ball into a position where your opponent can't get it back. And you can do that from lesson 1. And I think from that experience from all 3 players is, well, yeah, they loved it. They enjoyed it, because guess what? Tennis is really fun. All of us as tennis coaches watching or listening to this podcast, we love playing tennis because it's fun. And sometimes that fun's taken away because learning and teaching apparently takes over. But you can still teach and learn how to play the game via the game itself. So if you're interested in more ways of how to sort of use this approach, do please check out the links down below. No questions or comments today, which is a bit sad, but never mind. I'm just glad people are joining in and enjoying the podcast. If you are enjoying it and stuff, please do share it out. It does help the podcast out to get out to more people and stuff. I'm not sure what I'm going to do over the next couple of weeks with the podcast because it's obviously school holidays here now in the UK. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a house full of kids and wives and dogs and cats and stuff. But I will maybe try and get some stuff done and sort of stream it. But listen, if you are in the UK, enjoy your summer around the Northern Hemisphere. And yeah, until next time, take care.
Thank you for tuning in to the My Tennis Coaching Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an update.